This is Gulf Coast Live on WGCU. Good afternoon. I'm Valerie Edwards, and welcome to Day 2 of our week-long Your Voice series, when we ask you to join us as we examine issues of concern to Southwest Floridians. We've got a pretty big audience with us this afternoon here in the WGCU studios, and we're also streaming today's show live on the internet at WGCU.org and on our Facebook page at WGCU Public Media. This week, we're asking the question, what resources will it take to ensure that adults get to live out their lives in the comfort of familiar surroundings, to age in place? Consider these few words: invaluable resources, richer, essential to good life. That's how Partners for a Livable Community describe what a community looks like when stakeholders make it possible for seniors to age in place. All over the country, communities are recognizing the need for options other than nursing homes and assisted living facilities. But I got to tell you, it was nearly impossible to find a city or county agency here in Southwest Florida which is doing the sort of comprehensive service coordination for seniors that's going on in other parts of the country. Now, there was in some parts of Florida, but not here in Southwest Florida. But if you know of something, we'd love to hear from you. Tell us about your community, not the nonprofits. We know they're doing the hard work. They've got feet on the ground. For today, right now, our task is threefold. First, what you need to be aware of if you decide to stay in your home. There are some steps you should take to protect your assets. Secondly, taking steps to ensure your home is safe as you age. Finally, if you're on your own, there are community resources you can turn to ensure your safety. I want to welcome our guest this afternoon. First, Attorney Robert Adamski, who specializes in the area of elder law. Next, Ms. Stephanie Borden, a certified aging in place specialist. And finally, Levine Ann Kirkpatrick from Avow Hospice. I want to welcome all of you to Gulf Coast Live this afternoon. According to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, by the year 2030, 1 out of 5 people in America will be over 65. Those 85 and older are the fastest growing segment of the population, and as they grow older, the overwhelming majority of Americans will remain in their homes. And after a bit of research, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation came up with this criteria for what makes an elder-friendly community. Number 1, addresses residents' basic needs. That is, A, affordable housing, B, the neighborhood is livable and safe, C, people have enough to eat, and D, assistance services are available and residents know how to access them. So, based on this criteria alone, I want to ask those of you here in the audience today, how many of you in our studio feel you live in an elder-friendly community? Show of hands. One person? Chet, let's get a microphone over to you. In the meantime, let me give our number for our listeners this afternoon. It's 877-428-8255, 877-GCU Talk. Tell us if you live in an elder-friendly community.
Well, I live in an older, well-established neighborhood.
Hold on, Chet. Let me finish giving the question to our listeners. Or if you feel, tell me what you think your community can do to make it possible for you to age safely in place. Good afternoon, Chet. First, tell me where you live.
East Fort Myers, Morris Shores subdivision.
And tell me why you feel it's an elder-safe community.
It's an old established neighborhood. A lot of folks have lived there. One neighbor 40 years, another one 20 years. And that's the whole thing, is you get a lot of support group from your neighbors. Now, I'm here today to learn something. I've spent most of my life in preventive maintenance, and I need to make some of the most important decisions of my life, how not to run into problems in the rest of my life. I'm 76 years old, and I know I'm going to be addressing some of these issues.
Well, you look good for 76.
Thank you.
So let's see if we can't get our experts to answer some of those very important questions. Attorney Robert Adamski, I want to start with you this afternoon. As we get older, please stand up. One of the primary things people become most concerned about is protecting their assets. Biggest asset is the home. We all have heard those horrible stories about scams, elders being scammed out of their homes. What's the number one thing in that regard that people can do? What should they be aware of?
That's an excellent question. The problem as we age is that we become weaker mentally and physically. And to protect your home, it's very important to understand that you need a family network or a friend network around you to protect you. As we get older, you'd be surprised, people are very, very vulnerable to scams, as you say, and they're not always from outsiders. Most times it's from family, from insiders. It's basically it starts years earlier with dysfunctional families. The more that the family is dysfunctional, the more you will find inheritance theft and last-minute will changes, powers of attorney that allow people to change title to estates and to property, both real and personal, CDs, etc. So what people need to do is have a safe network around them and also plan. Planning is the most important part of everything. I think the healthcare professionals will agree with that as well.
Is that what you, part of what you do is estate planning? Is that part of the whole package, what we call estate planning, Robert?
Well, estate planning encompasses planning to transfer assets from one generation to the next, and also protecting your assets while you're alive and allowing you to enjoy those assets without the intrusion of other people. We also do estate litigation, which means that we protect your estate plan. Once it's in place, if someone tries to disrupt it or if someone comes in and uses undue influence upon you, we try to protect that. In an inheritance situation, there are two victims, basically. One is the person who intends to give the gift at their death, and the second is the recipient. If that gift doesn't get to the recipient, then it's what I call an inheritance hijacking. And we try to protect the people that, by good planning and also, if necessary, enforcing the plan later on. But that's what lawyers do for the people in the community.
Stay right there, because you brought up a point which is very interesting, at least to me, and that's how do we protect ourselves from our family. But let me give out our number for our listeners. We're on day 2 of our week-long Your Voice series here on Gulf Coast Live, examining housing options for seniors and what you need to do, what you need to know to protect yourself, how you can prepare if you plan to age in home. You can watch today's show live on the internet at wgcu.org/yourvoice or on our Facebook page at WGCU Public Media, also on our YouTube channel at WGCU. Our guests today are attorney Robert Adamski. He's an elder law attorney, certified aging and place specialist Stephanie Borden, and nurse Levine Ann Kirkpatrick from Avow Hospice. We invite our listeners to join the conversation this afternoon. If you've got a comment or question for our guests, give us a call, 877-428-8255, 877-GCU-TALK. And also tell us if you've made plans for yourself or your loved ones to age safely in place. Again, 877-428-8255. Our email address is gulfcoastlive@wgcu.org. You can also post your comments or questions on our Facebook page at WGCU Public Media or on our statewide blog at wgcu.org/Florida Talks. I want to go back to our attorney Robert Adamski, because, Robert, you mentioned earlier, if you have this infighting, how in the world are parents expected to protect themselves from those whom they love, who perhaps, for lack of a better word, Robert, preying on them at their most vulnerable time in their lives?
Well, the short answer is, number one...
Never a short answer, is there?
Well, not for attorneys, but one, education. Learn how the process works. Many, many people come to my office and they say, I want this instrument or this deed or whatever. And I said, well, why would you like to do that? And they said, well, I think it's going to accomplish this for me, and they're wrong. So they need to know the basics of estate planning, know how it works, what it means to put someone as a beneficiary on your CD. Learn that your will would not control that CD later, for instance. And the second thing is, and this is the most important part, is communication. Let everyone know what your plan is beforehand. Because if you're giving your property unevenly to your children, perhaps favoring one over the other, it's important for them to know why that is happening. After your death, you're not around unless you write a nice long letter to them explaining it, which rarely, rarely happens. they're going to misunderstand your intentions. They're going to accuse the child who was favored of some sort of undue influence and overreaching. So those are the two things. Educate yourself and then communicate that, and iron out the differences beforehand, if possible. Unfortunately, most people don't do that. They're afraid to do it for some reason, but that is the best way to do it.
At what point should adults prepare a will?
Well, it depends upon your situation. If you're a single person and you don't have any children, then a little later in life is better. If you don't mind the laws of intestacy taking over, in other words,
The laws of who?
intestacy, that means dying without a will.
Okay.
For instance, if I died without a will, it would go to my wife and children. If a single person, on the other hand, they may have a significant other, they may have plans for charity, et cetera. They don't want it to go to their family for some reason. They need to make it at that point. Younger people with children should have a will, if for no other reason than to decide who should be the guardian if both of them pass away and the children are left behind. And certainly as people grow older and they want their wishes to be known, they should have a will or a trust. The trust is a very good vehicle to avoid probate. And they also need items like a power of attorney, which will help them during life if something happens, a living will, a health care surrogate, and a pre-need guardian designation.
Well, our guests this afternoon join us as we examine options for seniors as they age in place. And the statistics bear it out. Seniors want to stay in their own home. No one wants to have to go to a nursing home or an assisted living facility. So we're asking the question of our audience, too. We want to get you guys involved in the conversation as well. What can the community do to ensure that seniors can age safely in place? Give us a call this afternoon, 877-428-8255, 877-GCU-TALK. You can also send us an email, gulfcoastlive@wgcu.org, or post your comments or questions on our Facebook page at WGCU Public Media or on our statewide blog at wgcu.org/Florida Talks. Let's take our first phone call of the afternoon. Good afternoon to Kenny from Northport, and welcome to Your Voice on Gulf Coast Live, Kenny.
Yeah, good morning. I appreciate you taking my call. It's a first-time caller. For the last year and a half, I just want to comment that I've been in a lawsuit with, unfortunately, my own sister who used undue influence over about a 5-year period. Found out after both my parents had passed that she had gone in, got a new will drawn up. And I guess my comment is that it is extremely hard to prove anything. She's got all the money. We spent a year and a half, $100,000, and finally just recently gave up. They told us it was going to take at least another year, another $100,000. And, it's just an uphill battle. And I guess that's my comment. Thank you.
Well, Kenny, thanks for calling, and I'll ask our attorney, Robert Adamski, if you'd like to respond to our caller. Let's give out the number one more time, 877-428-8255, 877-GCU-TALK. You can also email us, gulfcoastlive@wgcu.org. Robert, would you like to respond to Kenny's comments?
Well, I think Kenny's situation is very typical. Once the horse has left the barn, the money's gone. It's very, very difficult to get it back. It's often spent, gifted away, wasted. So even if you do prove undue influence and get a judgment from a court, and all the court can order is money. They can't order any other remedy. Once that happens, the money's gone, and Kenny may suffer a significant loss. And it should have, his parents could have avoided that if they had planned earlier, and perhaps if he had more oversight or looked more into the family situation. Often when you ignore something, hoping it'll go away, or you don't know it's happening, you suffer.
Kenny, how long has this fight been going on?
Well, we knew my sister started this about 5-6 years ago. My father passed about a year and a half ago. We've been in court ever since. Roughly, she stole somewhere between $2 and $4 million from my parents, and like I say, I just finally had to give up.
How much did you spend before you gave up, Kenny?
About $90,000.
Thanks for calling this afternoon. I think Kenny's story is a cautionary tale for a lot of our listeners this afternoon. Okay, let's go back to the phones. This time, Mary is calling from Charlotte. Do we have that call? Okay, let's see if we can get that call. In the meantime, let's give out the phone number, 877-428-8255, 877-GCU Talk. You can also email us, gulfcoastlive@wgcu.org, or post your comments or questions on our Facebook page at WGCU Public Media, or on our statewide blog, wgcu.org/Florida Talks. Questions or comments from our audience this afternoon? Okay, let's get a microphone over to you. Just a minute. Tell me your name and tell me where you're from.
Mac Moyes from Fort Myers. I'm a chartered financial consultant. When I came into the business many years ago, I didn't realize one of the main things that I would be doing is helping to resolve estate issues and working with people like Attorney Adamski. It is a nightmare. And you would not believe how many times the issues that come to the table, and as we say, the family that flies in from outside of town to resolve that estate and to collect their whatever they think is due them, only to cut each other's throat. And it goes back to the planning. They didn't think it was necessary to do the planning. Dad had a will. Everything was in the will. Maybe somebody changed it. Maybe there's a second copy. Maybe they changed the beneficiaries on the investment accounts, even though they may have had a trust. Took it out of trust, put it in a different name, named a different beneficiary, and it's a real terrible maze out there what happens when you get down to the real estate settlements. Very few have been friendly.
Do these families ever heal?
No. They're, like the gentleman called on the phone, they go their different ways. And I've seen a lot of them come to the table smiling, and the knives came out. It's kind of like on TV. It's amazing.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Mac. Let's go back to the phones. This time, Mary is calling from Charlotte. And Mary, good afternoon, and welcome to Your Voice on Gulf Coast Live. I want to let our audience know that the show is also streaming live on the internet at wgcu.org. Mary, thanks for calling.
Thank you so much. My situation in the family deals with a person passing away, and she put her property in all of the children's names. The catch of it is the property needs repair. There's only one child who has stepped up to the plate, who's living in the home, who's trying to fix up the home. There is no other financial support from the other siblings, but the other siblings refuses to relinquish their interest in the property. What can this one sibling do?
Let's see if we can get an answer to your question, Mary, and thanks for holding. We're going to go back to Attorney Robert Adamski.
That's a perfect example of bad planning. The parents obviously had good intentions, but they didn't understand what the result might be. They didn't understand how the children would react, whether they would pitch in with some funds or not. And it sounds like that'll be resolved by a court sooner or later, unfortunately.
Now, my follow-up question, Attorney, is this. My suggestion to her was to get an attorney and get her name off the property, relinquish her interest to the property, and give it to the rest that ain't doing anything, and let them decide whatever they want to do. Was that a pretty good suggestion?
Well, I hate to comment on
Yeah, we don't want to give out
ongoing
legal
cases,
advice.
so I think she should follow whatever her attorney's advice is.
Yeah, let's not give out legal advice because we don't know the intricacies of every case today. And since today we are talking about how to age safely in place, I want to get back on that. And Mary, thanks for your call as we say goodbye and invite our listeners to join the conversation. If you're listening to us on the radio, you can give us a call, 1-800-1877-428-8255, 877-GCU-TALK. If you're watching us online, you can check out the live stream at wgcu.org or on YouTube. It's also on our Facebook page at WGCU Public Media. The question we're asking today, now earlier I mentioned how the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Foundation describes a community that is elder-friendly. I want to read you some other criteria. And tell me, I'm asking our listeners and our audience today, another thing. In addition to addressing residents' basic needs, optimizes physical and mental health and well-being. For example, home health care, promotes social and civic engagement through cultural or recreational activities, maximizes independence for the frail and disabled, sort of, providing transportation that is accessible and affordable. So I ask our audience and our listeners, once again, based upon those criteria, how many of you find yourself living in an elder-friendly community? Show of hands? How disturbing is that no one says so? Okay, let's get a microphone over. We have a hand raised here in the audience. Let's get a microphone over here this afternoon.
Hi, my name is Valerie, and actually I also work for WGCU. But we have a number of communities here in Southwest Florida that are created as continuing care communities, like Shell Point and Cypress Cove. Shell Point is one of the largest employers in the area, and they create an environment, and I was wondering what our audience thinks about, making that move on their own to a community of that nature, which is by its very nature, I would assume, senior-friendly.
Okay, let's get a microphone. Give us your name. Wait a minute, let's get a microphone over to you.
I'm Sue Pillion. I actually work for a life care center in Naples called Moorings Park. We have we have independent living as well as the assisted and the skilled, but I actually work for the private duty home health agency. We also have a Medicare home health agency, and we are really instrumental in allowing people to remain in their home. We don't want to see people go to the hospital, to the emergency room, to a skilled facility. If they want to be at home, that's what we do. We help them to remain at home. We can do up to 24-hour care. We always have a nurse that's monitoring, and we have CNAs that actually provide the care.
Is this something you've thought about for yourself with respect to your own future?
Yes.
What plans have you made, Sue?
I haven't made any plans, except I have made my nursing friends my health care surrogate.
Well, isn't that interesting? You work in this industry, and you haven't made your own plans.
Yeah,
you think, yeah.
I'm too young, Valerie.
We're all too young. But, we've heard from Robert and we heard from Mac about this infighting that goes on with respect to assets, and I wonder if we're ever too young. I mean, if you've got a crayon on a coloring book, maybe you should start.
Exactly.
Those are your assets,
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much
You're
for your
welcome.
comments.
Thank you.
I want to introduce Stephanie Borden. She is a certified aging-in-place specialist. Stephanie, you have listened patiently as we've been talking with Robert about the legal steps seniors and their children should be aware of if mom and dad plan to stay in their home. First, let me ask you, what is a certified aging-in-place specialist? What's your role?
That's a credential that was developed jointly by AARP and the National Association of Home Builders with the exclusive goal of helping people to be able to stay in their comfortable homes and neighborhoods rather than to have to move into a community where their neighbors are going to be older people. The AARP public policy research, which they repeat every year, has consistently said that adults over 50 who are interviewed, 86 to 89% of them do want to stay in their private homes to age, because I think about my mother. That's really why I got into this. I didn't know about aging in place, and when my mother in Minneapolis had a health care crisis, none of the kids lived there, and had I known about aging in place, we could have made it possible for her to stay home by moving into an assisted living facility, even though it was lovely. And chin up, she tried to be brave about it. She had to give up her garden that gave her so much pleasure. One of her sources of socialization was that every week she went to the same coffee shop. The waitress knew the names of her grandchildren. She went to the same beauty shop for 14 years in a row. To me, aging is about human connections. The human connections are critical to staving off isolation and depression. So that's why I feel, and the research bears out, that aging in place means staying in your own neighborhood.
So you go into a home and you do what?
Well, I'm an educator. I hold workshops where I teach people how to design their own aging in place plan for themselves. I've developed a model that is, I believe, unique nationally, which has 6 stages, and it covers all the comprehensive aspects of aging in place.
Step 1, what's the first thing people should be aware of?
Okay, the model is called SHAIRS, S-H-A-I-R-S. S is safety and security. And I know that those of us in the audience, if you've ever been robbed in your home and you lose that feeling of safety and security, how much that compromises your quality of life. So in the workshop, I talk with people about how to make their entrances safer with lighting, some of the options for being able to get into your home quickly and safely are challenging for somebody who may be having arthritis or balance or strength issues. Some of the new technology with getting into your home would include keypad entrances where you just punch in a code. You don't have to get your key out and right. And also the newest is biometrics, where you purchase a lock where you register your fingerprint, just like going into Disney World. You push your finger onto the pad and your door will open for you. So also the approach to your home is important in terms of safety. Many stairs need railings on both sides and don't have them. And then we also teach people in the workshops that if they eventually need a ramp, how to do that correctly. I have to put in a word for the credential, Certified Aging in Place Specialist credential, because there are many very well-intentioned community and church groups around town who have installed wheelchair ramps and other aging in place improvements that are regrettably not up to the standards that are taught by the National Association of Home Builders. For example, if the ramp goes straight up from the sidewalk and there's no room for turning radius for a wheelchair or a scooter, which is 5 to 6 feet, then the person is in danger of just toppling off, and the ramp, rather than making the home safer, has actually caused an injury.
So it's important that you have someone who is credentialed. That's the underlying word in that. And all of what I heard, make sure someone has the proper credentials.
Well, and the Certified Aging in Place Specialist, that's not a credential. I don't feel anyone who goes into the home to do work necessarily needs to have that credential on their own, but they do need to have received some training and education on how to do those improvements properly. For example, a grab bar is one of the most cost-efficient ways of staying safe in the most dangerous room in your home, which is the bathroom. And if a grab bar is installed by the homeowner or a handy person who does not have the knowledge how to do it, they have to be blocked from behind. They have to support a minimum of 250 pounds, but considering weights of people these days, ideally they really should support more weight than that. But if a grab bar has been installed correctly and somebody's getting out of the tub and starts to lose their balance, they grab onto the grab bar, and what'll happen is they'll pull the grab bar out of the wall and they'll slip in the tub. So again, improper installation can actually cause injury rather than prevent it. So that is a concern I do have, yes.
Do you know off the top of your head the cost comparison between staying in your own home with the modifications that you've mentioned and perhaps going to a facility?
I do have a statistic that I teach in my workshops that is from MetLife. The Mature Market Institute does annual national surveys on the cost of assisted living and the cost of skilled nursing care. The figure I use in my workshops is very modest, and that is in Florida, the average cost for an assisted living apartment, bare basics with no auxiliary services, is approximately $3,131 a month, and they go all the way up to some of our continuing care retirement communities, which are wonderful options for some people. That's exactly what they want, and it's beautiful, and they're happy there, but they can approach $10,000 a month from what I'm told.
Okay, thank you very much,
You're
Stephanie
welcome.
Borden. Let's invite our listeners to the conversation. If you're listening, 877-428-8255 is the number, 877-GCU Talk. You can also send us an email, gulfcoastlive@wgcu.org, or post your comments or questions on our statewide blog. It's wgcu.org/yourvoice. No, it's not. It's wgcu.org/Florida Talks. I want to introduce Greg Zakowski. He's with us this afternoon. And Greg called this morning and wanted to share some plans his company does for helping. We heard Stephanie talk about some of the important steps seniors need to do and children should look at for improving their parents' home if parents want to age safely in place. Greg called this morning, said he had an interesting company that he wanted to share with us. Greg, you've got the microphone.
Hi, Valerie. I heard your advertisement this morning, and I thought it was right up our alley. My company, Control4U, works with a technology that we believe is going to be the future of aging at home. A lot of people don't have their whole family down here with them in Southwest Florida. It's just themselves and their neighbors, the community that they live in. And that's not always enough. And when they get older, it gets harder and harder to keep track of what's going on in the home. So we use a system called Grand Care Systems.
Called who?
What's that?
Did you say Granny Care?
Grand Care.
Oh, Grand Care. Okay,
Systems.
I'm sorry.
It allows the family to keep track of what's going on with their loved one, and their loved one to keep track of what's going on with their family. So the centerpiece of the system is a touch screen in the house that allows them to keep track of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and all kinds of other updates that the family's posting to these social media sites, and it all comes into one portal in their house so they can see videos of the baby's first steps, anything that's important with the family, events that are going on. And the family, in turn, can see what's going on in the house. So we'll put in pressure sensors or motion sensors in the house so that they can see that their grandmother is not spending too much time in bed, not spending too much time in the bathroom.
So I can be in Wisconsin and California and keep an eye on Nana in Southwest Florida.
You can be on vacation in France keeping an eye on Nana. You can be anywhere in the world, and that's really the nice part about it. And it doesn't just stop at wandering around the house. You know, there are systems where we can put in a month-long pill dispenser. So you can see that grandma's actually going and taking her medication on time. You can see that she's not wandering around the house. And we put pin pads, access at the front door. It makes it easier for somebody to get in the house. And we can also change up the pin pad access. So if they have somebody coming by the house to check on them, the family can actually see when that person uses their personal pin pad number on the door to come at the right time and make sure that people are coming to check on.
Can you, from Control4U, can you look to see, to ensure that the home is safe? Can you do that as well?
We can take a look and see certain measurables.
Like the perimeter and stuff like that.
We can tie into security systems and tell whether or not that the security system's been breached in any way, and we can tell that somebody's staying in one place too long or moving around too much. But it's not exactly like I'm on the facility there. We can put cameras up so people can see what's going on at all times from any location.
Okay, Greg, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Let's invite our listeners to the conversation. 877-428-8255 is the number, 877-GCU-TALK. You can also email us, gulfcoastlive@wgcu.org, or post your comments or questions on our Facebook page at WGCU Public Media or on our statewide blog, wgcu.org/Florida Talks. Let's take another question from our audience this afternoon. Kim, good afternoon. Tell me where you're from.
Yes, hi, I'm Kim Schuessler. I'm with Concierge Home Health Care here in Naples. And I just wanted to address a question you asked, Valerie. You asked all of us if we lived in an elder-friendly community, and only one person raised their hand.
I know.
And I think we've all recognized that that's an issue. So there are companies like Concierge Home Health Care where we actually find, okay, there is a gap in the system. We need to be mobile, and we need to be able to go to the home. And so there are resources, whether it's private duty home health like our company, or Medicare home health care, or we work in conjunction with each other, and we can make sure and ensure that people are safe in their homes and that they are getting the care that they need full circle. So they don't need to go to a skilled nursing facility or an assisted living facility because, like everybody said, those places are very pretty, but that's not their home. And they feel better and they do better when they are at home.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear Stephanie talk about her mom who enjoyed gardening and going to the coffee shop. These are the connections. That's what a community does. You know, I started off this afternoon using the words enriching and better for the community. What makes a community? What makes a community safe for elders, and that's the focus of today's program.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to the phones. This time, let's take a call from James. Oh, we have a posting on our Facebook. Let's read that, and then let's go to the phones. Jean on Facebook writes, there are no provisions for seniors to stay in their homes in Naples. No Meals on Wheels, or these services are very expensive. Anyone here from Naples, working in the Naples area? Can you tell me about that? Let's get someone else from our audience. Let's go over to Deborah Lynn here on the end. Deborah, let's get a microphone up to you. Can you stand up? Is that true?
Well, I think what we're hearing about is fragmented and minimal services. We do have Meals on Wheels programs in Collier. We have them all over Southwest Florida.
Gene is asking about Naples.
Yes,
okay.
in Naples. And what I think the problem is that people don't know, our seniors don't know how to access services and programs and supports. We have a very fragmented system. For example, 50,000 people in Southwest Florida alone don't access benefits that they publicly qualify for. So to answer this caller, one of the things that's happening in Collier County specifically to support people in Naples is all of the providers, public and private, hospice, medical health care, social service, human services, feeding, hunger, have all come together to develop a consortium called the Leadership Coalition on Aging for Collier County so that we can break these barriers and break down this fragmentation so that any door you open, any phone you call is a no wrong door, is a no wrong phone, that you will get connected to what you need. And we also, Easter Seals has a program that actually specifically helps people navigate to anything. They call us and we will be sure to get them connected to all the services and supports they need in the community.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Deborah, because I started off this afternoon saying I tried to find an agency which was coordinating. I called the city, I called the counties, I won't tell you which ones, we don't have to go there, but I tried very hard to find an agency which coordinated all of these services for seniors. At one agency I ran into, the Jewish Federation, they had actually disbanded because they couldn't find that sort of engaging, that support that they needed to build a strong network of resources for seniors. How can this happen in Southwest Florida?
You know, I think it was a fragmented approach again. Home health care doing this, and hospice doing this, and human services and elder services and so on and so forth. But what we need to do now is come together as a community. And one of the things we need to do is work to help people in their natural environment. So whether it's at their home or a place they go every day. And one of the things that we work with a lot is individuals adult children who live out of state, and we heard that already today, who are calling us saying, I don't know how to get XYZ set up for my parents. So in Collier, this has just been launched about a week ago. We facilitated a group of 30 organizations that came together. And so we invite anybody in our audience and out there in the listening audience to please contact us through collierseniorresources.org or at easterseals.com, and we will do everything we can to connect them to the services that they need.
Okay, Deborah, what we're going to do is, if members of our audience would like, what we'll do is we'll take your name and phone numbers and your email addresses and your websites, and we'll list them under resources for today's Gulf Coast Live, Your Voice. We have another caller from Facebook. Dee writes, we mentioned Shell Point, which is very expensive. Not everyone can afford that, and there are plenty of other 55-plus communities. She says she worries about those who are taken advantage of because they are lonely or family is not around. It's everyone's responsibility to take care of the elderly. Dee, thank you very much for writing. You too can post your comments or questions on our Facebook page. It's WGCU Public Media. Let's go to the phones, and this time welcome James from Fort Myers. James, thanks for calling in.
Well, thank you. I have a few comments after being through it for 10 years with a 99-year-old mother who recently expired. The first comment I would make is I think you need a professional evaluation to ensure that the elderly person is capable of remaining in the home, that they're not incontinent, or how much memory function they have, and the degree of loneliness they would suffer here, especially in the summer, by remaining in the home. I think you have to address the issue of costs. You know, each of these people that have come up with safety bars and all the other things, how much are these things going to cost? Because I have people living here in my community who exist on just Social Security. And as far as the relatives go, I think the family has to get together and say who's going to do what, who's going to visit when, and what are they going to do. And perhaps at that, you can eliminate the problem with the estate. The person who takes the major share of caring for the elderly person, that's probably the person that's going to wind up with the money or the assets. And so I thank you for taking my call.
Okay, James, and let me see if, I think Stephanie mentioned earlier, Stephanie Borden, our Aging in Place specialist, mentioned the cost of making these changes to the home so that mom and dad can stay there safely. What's it going to cost?
Well, first of all, it's natural that everyone is confused about how to pay for aging in place because there is a patchwork of sources that can be accessed. Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, and long-term care insurance are 4 of the contributing sources. But for an individual to navigate that on their own, extremely difficult. And that's why we do provide a lot of that information in my workshops. But I do want to say a special benefit for disabled veterans. This is very exciting. There's a program called the Specially Adapted Housing Program, SAH. Disabled veterans, even if the disability did not occur as a result of wartime service, they are eligible for a grant of over $63,000 to retrofit their home to make it safe and accessible and barrier-free for aging in place. So that's a wonderful
But what if mom
program.
and dad aren't veterans? Are there resources or grants available for mom and dad to tap into?
Well, because the federal government realizes as they look at demographics, as baby boomers age, it's much cheaper to keep people at home than it is to put them in institutional care. As a result, there is definitely a shortage of that right now. However, I'm feeling that from a federal policy level, there's going to be more programs developed and opened up to that simply because the federal government cannot afford to institutionalize baby boomers. They're going to overwhelm the system. And if AARP says almost 90% of people want to stay in their private homes and neighborhoods anyway, and it's cheaper to keep them at home, what earthly reason not to do it?
Yeah, what reason
I mentioned
not to?
long-term care insurance, and I know Matt here speaks at my workshops sometimes because he is aware of some insurance policies that provide money for these improvements. And also it's tax time. People who do things like grab bars and ramps and even something inexpensive like replacing doorknobs and faucets with levers, many of these items are now medically tax deductible, and that helps a little bit.
Well, that's good to know, Stephanie.
Yes.
Let's read another email, this one from Pam, who writes, I purchased a long-term care policy when I was 50. Now I'm 65. She wants to know if she lives another 25 years or so, and luckily will not have to use it. How can I be sure that the insurance company will be solvent or that there will be another alternative and I would have paid all these years in vain? Do you see home health care will combine with long-term care policies? And I'll throw that question open to our audience if anyone has any comments on that one. Mac, let's get a microphone over to you. In the meantime, let's give the phone number one more time. It's 877-428-8255, 877-GCU-TALK. If you're listening online, we are streaming online at wgcu.org. You can also send us an email, gulfcoastlive@wgcu.org, or check us out on Facebook. We're also live on Facebook this afternoon, WGCU Public Media. Mac, what do you say? Pam had an interesting, she purchased a policy.
Yes,
she wants to know if
purchased
it's
a
going to be
policy.
good for her.
Keep it in mind, it is an insurance policy. We're transferring the risk of the need for long-term care, not being able to do 2 or 3 of the activities of daily living to the insurance company. So yes, the insurance doesn't pay unless you go on claim. Here's a person who did the right thing, I think. They got it when they were young. So they didn't get it when they were 70. They got it when they were, I think, 50. The premiums for those are based on age. Typically, those premiums do not change. They could change over time, but for the most part, it's set. So if you add inflation into that, it's a pretty good deal today based on her age. The other part of that question was, well, if I keep paying on this for 25 more years, you know, I paid in $200,000-$300,000 maybe. I don't know the, you know, the specifics. If you add 3% inflation to that, and she needed 2 or 3 years of care, she'd probably use those premium payments up in the form of a payout of the long-term care insurance fairly quickly. And I tell some, you know, people that are healthy and
Mac, you're not giving us hope.
yeah,
Dude, yeah.
Well, I haven't. For most cases, when someone goes on claim, they are spending tens of thousands of dollars of the insurance company's money instead of their own money, and it's a well-paid premium. It could be that you pass away without needing that insurance. That could happen. But the likelihood, based on the statistics, is that a large percentage of our population will need some type of care, and can you afford it personally? So you're passing that premium cost off against using your own assets and depleting them. And maybe you have a goal for your assets to go on to your heirs for charity. You have some other issues for that.
Thanks, Mac. Thanks for that comment. We spoke first today, this afternoon, with attorney Robert Adamski. He is an elder law attorney. We also heard from Stephanie Borden. She is an aging in place specialist. And we've sort of touched on this issue, and I think we need to talk a little bit more about it, because there may come a point when some of us may have to go into hospice care, or we may have to have hospice care at home. If it's something you've thought about and you'd like to share your story, give us a call, 877-428-8255, 877-GCU-TALK. Right now, I want to turn to Levine Ann Kirkpatrick from Avow Hospice. Levine, you have listened patiently. Thank you very much this afternoon. And let me begin this afternoon. Is it inevitable that all of us at some point will require hospice care?
I would say if you're still alive and you live a long period of time, it's inevitable. When we're really talking about aging in place, what are we really saying?
Living a full life
until
the
we're
end.
ready to live to the end. I think that's what most people look at. I would like to stay in my home until the end. Aging in place is a nice way of saying that. Really, that's what it's saying. And we all will get to that point eventually. We can come at different ages, but we'll get to that point. And that's the great thing about hospice care. Our goal is to keep the patient, the client, wherever they want to be at the end of their life.
So I can have hospice care in-home?
Any place you want it.
How does that work?
It's very simple. Hospice is a Medicare benefit, so if you're old enough to collect Medicare, it's covered 100% under Medicare, which a lot of people do not know. You can refer yourself. If a physician feels that you have 6 months or less, then you are appropriate for hospice care. And this can be any age. We take care of infants, too, and children.
So hospice care works. And we didn't talk about this with Robert Adamski, and I got to talk about it. But who makes that decision? The physician? But what if mom and dad are incapable of making those decisions?
Well, we hope that people prepare themselves with what we call living wills or healthcare surrogacy appointees.
Hold that thought right there. How many of us here today have a living will? Oh, that's pretty good. That's most of the audience. Okay.
Well, I think when we talk about health care, sometimes people find that more of a priority than sometimes our finances. And living wills are very important, but most important is that health care surrogate that you're going to appoint. So when mom and dad cannot make that decision, or whomever we're discussing, then that health care surrogate will step in and make that point at the end of life.
Who can be a health care surrogate?
Anybody you decide you want to appoint of legal age. They have to be 18.
So Avow is now the services you offer. You can come into the home and work with a patient. Is that similar to how hospice works across this community and across the country?
It pretty much works the same. We have several levels of care. One is in your home, which would be an assisted living or a long-term care facility. We also have an inpatient unit, which we actually can take care of patients that may need a little more care temporarily within an inpatient unit. And we have crisis care, too, that we can bring in 24/7 care for a person. Normally, we don't do that. We rely on our home health agencies to assist with that. But we can bring that in, too. So there's several different levers.
And all of this is covered by
Medicare. And we also have respite care. When a patient needs, when a caregiver needs a little bit of a break for 5 days, we can do respite care with Medicare, and that's covered, too.
Okay. For example, say I have to go to your facility because the doctor says I'm terminal.
Right.
But I know that the end is days, if not hours away. And I decide, hey, I prefer to die at home.
You can stay
I
home.
do that?
The one thing about hospice, which is great, is the patient or family, whoever is the decision maker, they are the guide of how they want to have those last days.
Has anyone here thought about hospice? Okay, I want to know why. Gail, let's get a microphone back to you. In the meantime, let's get that phone number out for our listeners, 877-428-8255, 877-GCU-TALK. Gail?
Yes, I am with a Medicare certified home care agency in Naples, and we do cover Lee and Collier County. I just want the audience to know that, as Ann was just saying, Medicare does pay 100% for home health care services.
But I wanted to know if you've thought about hospice care for yourself.
Yes, I have thought about hospice. I actually used to be employed at hospice. Hospice is a fantastic place for support for not only for the patient that is near the end, but also as well for the family. That we go out and hospice does support all the family members. They have several programs for all the family members. They even have programs for dying animals now, I understand.
Hospice, interesting.
So,
Okay, let's hear from someone else. Do we have someone here on the end? Okay, Santos, stand up. Tell us where you're from.
Santo Garcia from Fort Myers. I own the Garcia Center, which is an outpatient clinic here in town. Hospice, wonderful. Work with plenty of patients that have need for it. I'd like to pull back about 30 years for a second.
We only have a minute.
Okay.
So.
No, I'm just saying, stress the importance of developing a baseline, a clinical baseline for our parents and those that are aging, so we know where they are in 50, 55, 60, so we can start very early to identify changes in their clinical status.
Okay.
So.
We are almost out of time for today's show. I want to thank our guests for being here this afternoon and for sharing their stories. As I said earlier, we do have to say goodbye, but I want you to stick around, and I want to invite our listeners as well. We're going to run a little longer today. Unfortunately, you won't be able to hear it on the radio, but you can go to our website, wgcu.org/yourvoice, to hear this story as we run a little longer today. We're out of time for this edition of Your Voice on Gulf Coast Live. Today's Your Voice on Gulf Coast Live will be broadcast on WGCU's Encore TV channel 30.3, cable 202 this Thursday, March 1st at 7 p.m. The video will also be posted on WGCU's YouTube channel. Thank you to my guests for being with us this afternoon. Robert Adamski, elder law attorney, Stephanie Borden, certified aging in place specialist, and Levine Ann Kirkpatrick, registered nurse and director of external affairs at Aval Hospice in Naples. There is more information on today's show, as well as a look ahead at this week's schedule of shows and an archive of our past shows at our website, wgcu.org/yourvoice. To comment on anything you've heard on this or any edition of Gulf Coast Live, email us, gulfcoastlive@wgcu.org. This is WGCU Fort Myers 90.1 FM, WMKO Marco 91.7 FM, NPR for Southwest Florida. Stay with us. World Have Your Say from the BBC is coming up next.